This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. You can visit their store by using my referral link in the description below. Hi everyone, I'm Hone, and it's Friday, and that means it's time for another MTG Top 10, the series where I rank cards based on their historical performance at Magic's highest level of competition. Over the years, I've looked at various mana values in this series, but one thing I haven't done is take a look at cards that cost multiple mana of the same color, and I thought that was probably something that I should do, and we're starting with a look at cards that cost 4 mana of the same color. I was inspired to do this largely by the Invoke cycle in the newly released Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, all of which cost quadruple mana of a single color. 4 mana of the same color is a pretty intense requirement and gets pretty close to forcing you to either have excellent mana or be a monocolor deck if you want to cast them. The trade-off is that cards that cost quadruple mana of the same color tend to be super powerful, or at least super sweet. I chose to exclude cards that cost 4 hybrid mana of the same color. I did this because while you can cast them with 4 mana of the same color, you can also cast them with mana of a couple of different colors, and I thought that was enough of a reason to exclude them. So in all, there have been 39 cards in Magic's history that cost 4 mana of the same color, and in this video we'll talk about the 10 that have left the biggest impact on competitive Magic. Before we get started, here's a quick reminder on how I score cards in these videos. A first tier top 8, like a top 8 at a Pro Tour or a Mythic Championship, is worth 2 points, and a second tier top 8, which is at events like Grand Prix and Magic Fests, is worth 1 point. Alright, let's get to the list. At number 10, it's Empty the Pits. This costs quadruple black mana, and also wants you to pump a whole bunch of additional mana into it so that you can generate a ton of zombie tokens at instant speed. It comes with Delve, which helps you lower the cost of the card significantly, though obviously you do still need to pay quadruple black to cast it. But yeah, if your graveyard is loaded up enough, you can generate a ton of zombies at the end of your opponent's turn, and then on your turn, swing out for the win. It wasn't a heavily played card while it was in Standard, but it was played in some versions of Abzan midrange, including one deck that top-8'd Grand Prix Santiago in 2014. It hasn't gained any points since that one Grand Prix top 8, and it isn't super likely to gain more points in the future, so one of the Invoke cards from Neon Dynasty may be taking its spot in the near future. At number 9, it's Force of Nature. It's actually the very first card to cost 4 mana of the same color, as it's the only card with quadruple mana of the same color in Magic's very first set, Alpha. This 8/8 Trampler only costs 6 mana, which is still reasonably efficient by today's standards, so it was especially so back in the mid-90s. Of course, the Force comes with a big downside. You not only have to pay 4 mana of the same color to cast it, you also have to pay 4 mana every upkeep or it turns around and punches you in the face for 8. Force of Nature picked up its lone top 8 at the 1995 World Championships, where a green-white aggro deck made the top 8 with a singleton copy of the Force. Like Empty the Pits, its spot on this list could be in jeopardy. At number 8, it's Enter the Infinite. This of course costs quadruple mana of the same color, but it also costs a whole lot of additional mana, with a mana value of 12. But it definitely gives you your mana's worth since it lets you draw every single card in your library and put one back. It's been played in some legacy Omnitel decks, which look to use Show and Tell to put Omniscience in play and then go off. Obviously, if you combine Omniscience with Enter the Infinite, you not only draw every card in your library, you can cast every card in your library too. And obviously enough, that means you win the game. It was also played in Pioneer Lotus Field decks, which sought to make absurd amounts of mana, and one of the ways the deck could win was by wishing for both Omniscience and Enter the Infinite out of the sideboard, and going for the same combo that's played in Legacy. It hasn't gained any points in Pioneer though since 2020. Still, it's obviously a crazy powerful card to combine with various combo pieces, and it's always got a shot at gaining more points in the future. At number 7, it is Phyrexian Obliterator. This thing pays you off for producing 4 black mana by giving you a 4 mana 5/5 with some pretty absurd upside. If you're a mono black deck where casting the Obliterator is simple, it is an absolute monster. Not only does it come with Trample, it also punishes the opponent for damaging it, forcing them to sacrifice a permanent for each point of damage they do to the Obliterator. Phyrexian Obliterator gained all of its points in Standard, where it was played in mono-black zombie decks. And yeah, you probably noticed the Obliterator isn't a zombie, but if you were a mono-black Standard deck, there was no good reason not to run the Obliterator, so that deck did. It doesn't have any points since 2012, but it did recently-ish gain legality in Historic, and while it doesn't have a top 8 in the format yet, some players did bring mono-black aggro decks featuring the Obliterator to the Strixhaven Championship, so maybe there's a chance it finds some points in Historic in the future. At number 6, it is Mind Over Matter. This enchantment lets you discard a card to untap an artifact, creature, or land. Obviously, this is something that has some pretty exciting combo potential. It gained all of its points at Pro Tour Rome in 1998, which was an extended event, and it pretty much dominated. It was abused by two different combo decks. One of them looked to use High Tide to make islands produce more mana, so discarding cards to Mind Over Matter allowed you to produce silly amounts of mana. You could combine it with a bunch of card draw to keep things rolling before winning the game with a stroke of genius that milled the opponent out. The other deck used High Tide alongside a whole bunch of artifacts in Tolarian Academy, with the game plan ultimately being to mill the opponent out with Stroke of Genius. Both of these decks were part of the dreaded Combo Winter, where combo decks just dominated every format of Magic, and Mind Over Matter was one of many cards banned in an attempt to put an end to combo dominance. It was ultimately banned in Standard, Extended, and Legacy, and restricted in Vintage. Since those days, it's been unbanned in Legacy and unrestricted in Vintage, but it hasn't done anything since then. At number 5, it is Unnatural Growth, the newest card on this list. This quadruple green enchantment doubles the power and toughness of your creatures during each combat. Obviously, in an aggressive green deck, this can result in some absolutely devastating turns. If it comes down on a board that is curved out, the game is going to be pretty close to over. Unsurprisingly, that's exactly the kind of place it sees play, in the current Standards mono-green aggro decks, which are pretty likely to gain more points going forward. At number 4, it is Feasting Troll King. The Troll King is a monstrous 6-mana 7/6 with Vigilance and Trample, and he brings 3 food tokens along for the ride. Then if he dies, you can cash that same food in to bring him back to the battlefield. Now, they made sure you only get the food if you cast it from your hand, so you can't just keep doing that. However, if your deck has other ways to make food, you certainly can. In Standard, the Troll King was played in Gruul and mono-green aggro decks. It has also gained a few points in modern food decks, though it isn't exactly a staple there. It has some potential to gain more points going forward, though it doesn't have any in 2022 so far. At number 3, it is Mass Manipulation. This mass mind control effect really wants you to be playing blue mana, but if you are, it's a super powerful effect. Even just stealing a single creature is usually a huge deal, so if you can do more than that, this will feel truly absurd. You can also take Planeswalkers, which is really sweet. It gained all of its points in the Standard of 2019, where it actually managed to see play in a wide variety of decks, including things like Jeskai Control and Simic Food, but it was at its best in ramp decks that look to abuse Nissa, who shakes the world, because with her and other mana multipliers around, you could just end up stealing your opponent's entire board. Some versions of the deck even called themselves Bant Manipulation, showing you how important the card could be in the deck. It doesn't have any points since 2019, but it's pretty high up on this list, and quadruple colored cards are rare enough that I don't imagine it will be off of this list anytime soon. At number 2, it is Cloudthresher. This 6-mana 7/7 has Flash and Reach, making it pretty capable of ambush blocking stuff, and in addition to that, it also does 2 damage to all flyers and each player. So, if your deck is built around going wide with small flyers, Cloudthresher just destroys you. It also comes with Evoke, which basically means you can cast it just for the 2 damage to all flyers effect, and sometimes you'll want to. It also lets you do something with Cloudthresher even if you don't have the quadruple green mana to cast it normally. Cloudthresher was hugely successful, mostly as a result of the metagame in Block and Standard at the time, which was pretty much dominated by fairies. Most fairies are 2/2 or smaller, so Cloudthresher was some important tech against them, as it often operated as a one-sided Wrath effect. It was featured in the sideboard of a lot of green decks and was also played significantly in the main deck of ramp decks. Cloudthresher is unlikely to gain more points in the future. I mean, it hasn't since 2009, but it has a high enough point total that it will probably manage to stick around on this list for a long time. And at number 1, it's Griselbrand. In a vacuum, this is one of the best creatures in the game. Not only does he let you pay life to draw cards, he can also gain you life back thanks to Life Link, and then let you draw more cards. It's hard to beat Griselbrand in most cases, even if he is killed right away because of the card advantage. But Griselbrand's mana cost, including quadruple black, is no joke, and that means he can really only be played in decks that cheat him into play. This does mean that people basically never hardcast Griselbrand, since doing it early isn't really an option. But that's okay because there's lots of formats that look to cheat him into play. It gained a few points in Standard, where it was usually reanimated with Unburial Rites, and a few in Modern, where it's usually done with Goryo's Vengeance. The Eternal formats are where it is easiest to cheat into play, though. In Legacy, this is often accomplished with Show and Tell, Sneak Attack, and various reanimation spells, and in Vintage, it's usually done with Oath of Druids or Show and Tell. It's going to continue to gain points going forward, and it's hard to imagine it ever being unseated from its number 1 spot on this list. Well, those are the 10 cards that produce quadruple mana of the same color that have left the biggest impact on competitive Magic. If you want to own any of these powerful but mana-intensive cards, check out the description where you'll find direct Card Kingdom links for each of them. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it so that others can enjoy it too. If you want to catch up on the over 430 other MTG Top 10s, you should see a playlist on your screen shortly. If you want to make sure you catch future MTG Top 10s, you should subscribe and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching.